In this video, I'm going to show you how to take inexpensive 4x4 wood coasters and make a custom coaster that you can gift or keep in your house. I'm using DIY paint. Here, I sprayed it with my water mister and then I applied Blue Iris by DIY Paint. Here, I'm just using an ordinary artist brush just to get the paint on. DIY paint is highly pigmented and it dries a little bit lighter than when it's wet. I went ahead and I did a few little touch-up to the areas that needed a little bit more paint, and once it was dry I flipped it over and I applied DIY Paint's White Swan on the back. With thin wood you really want to paint the back side because you don't want it to warp, and I was going to apply a white felt on the back, so that's why I chose white. I have the IOD Retro stamp to customize this coaster. This is a fun stamp. You can leave it as is when you stamp it, or you can color it in. It also comes with masks, and you'll see here how I use the mask to create a custom fun look. The very first time that you open up your stamp to use it, you want to take a sanding sponge and just run it through just like I'm doing. Once one way, and then you want to flip it and go the other way. And that just gives it some tooth to allow your paint or your ink to stick on there and just give it some good texture. So here, I'm making this coaster for my best friend. Her last name starts with an R. So I just peeled off the R and I used the acrylic to hold it on and to be able to apply it. I'll show you that here in a second. This is the mask. Once I figured out exactly where I wanted it with the actual stamp, I put the mask in its place. Then I took my R and I put it on the acrylic. This way I can have something to hold on to when I ink it. I grabbed my IOD Toile stamp and I decided to use just a portion of it just to give it some floral background. So I put my mask exactly where I was going to put the R, and then I stamped on top of the mask so that this way there would kind of be a cutout where my stamp will go, but then outside of that you would be able to see the floral toile. You'll see here in a second what I mean. When you apply your stamp, you don't want to move it around. You just want to put it down, commit, and then rub or tickle the spots where the ink is to make sure that you can get it on your piece. And so I did that to every coaster. And I didn't put it all in the same place. I wanted it to be random and each one different. Then I took my IOD ink in black and I applied it using the ink pad. And you don't have to press hard, you just want to pat it on there and then take your take your stamp and apply it and run your finger all over the letter or whatever stamp that you're using to ensure that you get a good impression. And so here you can see, the R and you see the toile behind it. So I did that to all four. Now I'm going to go ahead and fill in the R. I use my mist sprayer to dampen my brush, and now I'm going to use Little Black Dress by DIY Paint, and I'm going to color in the R. You can follow me on all the social media sites, Chalk It Up with Lisa, and please take a minute, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Now it's time for some fun. We're going to take embossing powder, and here I'm using rose gold and versamark ink pad. I stamp my R with the versamark ink pad, and then I go ahead and I reapply my letter, hovering over, making sure I get it exactly in the same spot And then I do the same thing. I make sure that I rub my finger over all of the piece so that I could get a really good impression. And when I lift it up, straight up, you can see where I've applied the versamark ink. So now I'm going to take my embossing powder and I'm going to sprinkle it over the parts where the versamark ink is. And I'm just going to move it around to make sure I get it fully coated. I also use either cardstock or some kind of a paper to catch the extra embossing powder. And here you can see how I've applied it on there. If you find that you've missed a spot, just apply a little bit more powder. Here, I take a heat gun and it puffs up the embossing powder and it changes how it appears. It's such a cool process and it happens really quickly, but you can see how cool of an effect it gives any of these pieces. I've done this with other stamps and I just love the way that it comes out. So I wanted to have a nice little border, and I went ahead and I took my ink pad and then just applied it on the sides, and then the excess powder that I had already on my cardstock, I applied it on there, and then I used my heat gun. Make sure that you remove your excess powder away because it will puff up. So I did that to give it just a nice consistent look and make it look really cool. Just be careful because it really gets hot. I cut a piece of felt the size of my coaster so that I could get that glued on. Here I'm just using Gorilla Glue. Most of the time I use Type-On Quick and Thick or Aleene's craft glue. Just use what you have on hand. Now I'm going to make this very usable by using DIY Paint's Big Top Top Coat. I spray my brush to get it nice and wet before I go ahead and I apply the top coat. And you just want to do nice even brush strokes. I did 2 coats, you could do 3. It's a very durable finish and it dries super fast. And once you seal DIY paint, the color just gets vibrant and it comes back to life and gives it a nice, rich, intense color. Please subscribe to my YouTube channels to get more wonderful tutorials, things that will inspire you to create your own lovely things.